QuickBooks Pro Desktop 2021 Employee Center. Let's get into it with Intuit's QuickBooks Pro Desktop 2021. Here we are in our Get Great Guitars practice file. We currently have the home page open. You can open the home page by going to the company dropdown, selecting home page. We also have the open windows open. You can open the open windows by going to the view dropdown, selecting the open windows list, and seeing whether or not you have the collapsed item collapsed or not to view the open windows. In a prior presentation, we've looked at the employee flow down here on the home page of the employee flow chart. The payroll flow, the payroll process, the payroll cycle. Now we want to take a look at the Employee Center, which you can get to by going to the Employee Center on the homepage, or I usually go to the drop-down because you can find it all the time from the drop-down on the under Employees top item, Employees Center. So I'm going to close this open windows to the left. So we have a similar layout as you may have recalled from the Customer Center and the Vendor Center. We got now the employees listed on the left-hand side. We only have the 2 employees here. And then if we click on either one of those employees, we're going to have some of our transaction data to the right. The data for this practice file is in 2021, which right now is in the next calendar year. So I'm going to say next year, and we see 2 paychecks that have been processed. So this is one way that obviously we can go into our employee information and get a rundown of that information here. And then up top, to create a new employee, we hit the new employee item up top. And it's a little bit more complex to enter an employee than it would be to enter a vendor or a customer, although we have similar screens. We got the similar kind of data and contact information. The major difference will be, of course, the payroll information down here that we'll have to enter when we enter a new employee. We'll see that in a future presentation when we start to create the new company file, and we will then set up these employees at that point in time. But just to check this one out, I'm going to double click on the atom that has been set up here. That then will open up the new employee information. If you're entering a new employee information into QuickBooks and actually using QuickBooks to process the payroll, then you are going to want basically the W-4 form in front of you. That's where a lot of the information will come from, including the name, social security number, and then what their marital status. Obviously, the address is necessary. Some of this other information is going to be not necessary to process payroll, but like with the vendor and customer might be useful. Additional information, and then of course the payroll information. This is where we're going to say how often we pay, bi-weekly, weekly, semi-monthly, monthly, and so on. Are they salary or are they hourly? We're going to set that up here, and then we'll set up their tax information and this information up top. That's where the complexity will typically lie. You want to get the withholdings and whatnot set up correctly. Once set up, if you have the paid process within QuickBooks, it's pretty basic that QuickBooks can then process the payroll, although once you then look at the reports, if there is a problem, it could be a little bit complex because, again, payroll is just going to process a lot of data, and there's a lot of things you got to track to set it up. So QuickBooks is getting pretty good at actually processing the payroll, making the process easy. The problem is that if there is a problem, you don't really know about it until at the end of the quarter when you make the 941s, or at the end of the year even, when you actually process the W-2s. So again, get some advice on setting up the payroll when you set it up. And then if we go to the second tab over here, we're going to have our information that's broken out basically by the items that as we would see in the home page. In other words, if I select this item here, go to the home page, we see basically our 3 icons, paying the employee and then the payroll liabilities. That's in part what we'll see in this little widget. If I go back over here, we've got the actual paychecks. Again, we're talking about 2021, which in the case for me is next year. So then we have our paychecks, and we could sort the paychecks by paycheck here, and then date item up top instead of looking at the employee first, right? We can just sort the paychecks themselves, and we could sort the items by date and so on, check number and so on. And then we have the liability checks. Once again, for the next year, I'm going to go, so next calendar year, these are going to be the checks that we paid to the IRS in our case, or the Fed, because these are the federal payroll taxes that we're talking about. So you could take a look at the payments. Liability adjustments would be here. Year-end date adjustments and non-payroll transactions here as well. If I go back to the first tab, Notice you do have some other information that you can put in place for the employees, the to-dos, the notes, the sent mail that you can track within the employee section as well. But of course, the processing of the payroll is the main thing that you would be looking at with regards to the employees, the most complex things that will be affecting basically the financial statement information. That's the stuff that we'll be taking a look at primarily when we run through the practice problem in the second half of the course.